Dan Cohen, sitcom husband. Sitcom husband, Dan Cohen.
One of the oldest bits on TV is the sitcom husband. There's a long, storied history on television of doofy morons being married to women who are completely out of their league. Think Everybody Loves Raymond, or The Simpsons, or The King of Queens. The trope is so old, it's practically prehistoric. The Flintstones, anybody? These shows are full of husbands who are constantly being saved from themselves by their long-suffering wives. And I used to watch these shows and think how ridiculous they were until I realized I am a sitcom husband. Let me tell you what I mean. A couple of months ago, my wife, Kazmira, quit her corporate job, packed her car to the gills, and disappeared into Yosemite National Park for a 3-month camping trip. She left behind our 6 pets, a jungle of plants whose thirst is seemingly unquenchable, and me, a husband with a little bit too much time on my hands. You see, Kazmira always has typically handled the plant and animal care in our home, and I consider myself a plant and or animal. But I knew that I would have to take on some of the tasks that she's leaving behind. But of course, me being a simple sitcom husband, I just pictured myself, bopping around in my underpants and watching shows about drunken aliens, catching Bigfoot on the History Channel, and eating blocks of cheese the size of my fist. Now, sadly, that cheesy, alien-filled dream would have to wait because, even though I had always been the only man in the house, I had never really been the man of the house until Kazmira drove away, which I don't think she would have done if she'd ever seen a single episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. You know what always happens in sitcoms? The kitchen sink springs a little leak, and the wife says, let's just call the guy. And the manly sitcom husband says, ooh, I can fix it. Cut to a scene a minute later, and there's holes punched in the wall, and the floor is flooded, and they just end up calling the guy anyway. Well, I always thought I was evolved, and I was good at just skipping ahead to calling the guy. It turns out Kazmira was just tricking me. She would say, Dan, you are so smart, and you are so brave, and you are so busy, you don't have time. Why don't you just call the guy? And I would say, you know what, you're right. I am smart. And I am brave. I should just call the guy. I'm glad I thought of it. So, day 1, I'm sitting in my bathroom and I think to myself, my shower could be bigger. So, the next thing I know, my bathroom doesn't have drywall or a floor, and the toilet is in the backyard. And I'm thinking I might have to call the guy. But it's not just these unfinished household projects that makes me long for the sense and sanity of my sitcom wife. You see, on day 3, I nearly murdered myself in our garage. You see, that's where we keep the litter boxes for our 4 cats. And if the boxes are not perfectly clean, they go right on the floor next to them. And as you can imagine, after a couple of days on my own, I had a mess to clean up. So I'm looking for the special cleaner that is supposed to deter the cats from going again, but I can't find it. So I just grab a big old jug of bleach, and I just get to pouring. Now here is where it would have been very helpful to have my smart sitcom wife. She would have said, hey, Fred Flintstone, cat pee is 90% ammonia. Maybe don't mix it with bleach. Unfortunately, she wasn't there. And so almost immediately my eyes start to tear up and my chest starts to ache and I'm catching my breath and I'm stumbling around and I barely get to the garage door to open it before the whole room fills with toxic gas. And all of my Toastmaster friends were 1 minute away from looking for the project manual that covers eulogies. You know, I think, though, the most challenging thing about having her gone, I think something I didn't anticipate, was walking our dogs. You see, she goes every morning on a tandem 2-mile run with our border collies. And I guess our evening strolls, where each of us are just walking one dog, not really indicative of the tandem walking experience, because when you get Jasper and Jackson together on that tandem leash, the experience is a little bit more physical. It's a little like dog sledding without the snow, or a sled, or an experienced sled driver. Every time I'm being dragged down the street by these furry maniacs, I just can't help but think of Darren Stevens from Bewitched and nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz peeking through her blinds saying, "Abner, they're dragging him down the street again." After day 7, my body was so sore, I didn't think I would make it through the summer. I couldn't even walk to the ruin that was once my bathroom. And when I tell Kazmira about this, she just says, "That's weird. I never have that problem." And I say, "Well, sure, you run marathons. I can't even run a bath." All these years, I thought to myself how ridiculous these husbands were. How could they hang on to these amazing women? And now I just think to myself, shh, don't jinx it, dummy. You'd be dead without her. I have never had more admiration and love for my wife since my realization that I am a sitcom husband. Now, Kazmira came home a couple of weeks ago. She's back there in the back. And it has been a true blessing to have her home. I am no longer a sideshow for our nosy neighbors. There's just one problem. She just keeps nagging me to get that toilet out of the backyard. Does anybody have a guy I can call? Mr. Toastmaster.